Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
It isn't fate, and it isn't luck that this home burned down, and this home didn't. The difference is being firewise. Use non-combustible roofing. Screen your attic and eave vents. Create a 3-foot area around your house with fire-resistant vegetation or rock gardens. Remove tall grass and spruce trees within 15 feet and keep firewood 30 feet away. Take the steps to protect your home today before tragedy like this happens to you. Wildfires happen. Be ready.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting this evening's show. High pressure pretty well over our part of the country, as it has been and will stay that way. A lot of cloudiness socked in over the Gulf of Alaska today, spread over to Kodiak Island. And yesterday, this was the extent of the clouds here out over the Gulf, out along the southeast coast, kind of a weak low center right in there. And the showers that were occurring there over portions of the Panhandle. But today, we'll see about 24 hours later, that whole area expanded westward and socked in Kodiak Island with quarter-mile fog for about 20 minutes this morning. But they held on to the IFR conditions a lot longer on the east side. Still clear over there in Shelikof Strait. But this area clouds pushing up into southern Cook Inlet and covered all of Prince William Sound on up and through Passage Canal to Whittier, with clouds there and also up along the coastal areas. 1/100 of an inch of rain fell down in the Cordova area today, and I'm not sure if that was just thick fog or maybe some drizzle, but anyway, that was a little bit of moisture falling out of this cloud deck. A little more numerous showers over the northern southeast coast today. Juneau, Haines, a lot of the areas there reporting showers at some point in the day today. It appeared to be tapering off during the afternoon hours and has ended down to the south. Otherwise, on the breakup chart here, again, breakup this year is being a real sweetheart compared to last year, with no watches, warnings, or advisories of any kind out for the rivers. Still pretty well solid, white up there along the Arctic coast, and it looks like the Noatak River here, unknown conditions, but the Kobuk is got some open areas there, and looks like now the Yukon mostly open to some open out toward the Delta and across the Delta, while the looks like mostly open here over the Copper River down on the southern end. Moving on to today's satellite imagery, now that on this infrared, the low clouds sort of show up here, but really not as extensive as, or as good as they show up on the visual imagery, but you can see the shower clouds here. In fact, some thunderstorms today breaking out there just east of the border. Well, maybe a little farther east. Right in this area, thunderstorms this afternoon. The showers up over the northern Panhandle area. And starting out, you can see a little bit of a weak circulation there. That helped keep the moisture in, gave enough lift to the atmosphere to wring some light rainfall amounts out of the marine layer. And breaking out, looked like starting to get some clearing here over the southern areas, mostly due to the advance of this next system coming up from the south. And that's going to tend to shut the moisture off even further and to a greater extent up the Panhandle tonight. As that approaches, wind flow becomes a little more offshore. Otherwise, we've got this first front here trailing back, really not a front, but kind of a boundary between the strong upper level ridge here over the interior and then the cooler air mass back to the west. And it's sort of just sliding up the western edge of the high pressure area. Then another system back out through here developing that low up there to the north continuing off to the Arctic, more moisture and a frontal boundary quite vividly showing up here out to the west with rainfall and increase in the winds out here over the Aleutians, but some clearing there around the Adak-Atka area, extending back up just west of the Pribilofs today. And this area coming down, Dutch Harbor had a little bit of rain and fog, with a lot of sunshine there across the Bristol Bay zone over to just east of Kodiak. And rolling this through again, you can see all this moisture heading northeastward, but there is a gradual shift eastward to the pattern. This system down here building high pressure up over the southeast Bering Sea, and that's going to allow this system to push eastward and kind of cut the current upper level high down and suppress it southward here. And we should have a weak trough, or at least frontal boundary, swinging across south central Alaska probably Tuesday night, the way it looks at this point in time. This is really going to weaken and lose its identity later tonight as it moves eastward. At the surface here, you can see the clouds really well on this imagery, right up on the east side of Kodiak, socked in again all along the coastline, all the way down to the Panhandle and beyond, with a weak trough out here, areas IFR to low IFR with drizzle, again, some possible areas of light rain, but the showers today, again, on the decrease there over the northern Panhandle. And the white up here, that's the snow-capped Alaska Range, not any cloudiness, a lot less clouds in the central interior than what was seen yesterday. And as a result, temperatures warmed up to near 70 degrees through the Kuskokwim Valley, I believe, or upper 60s there. The Susitna Valley, both Palmer and Talkeetna, reached 70 today. And then we have this frontal boundary up through here, and then that trough, more or less, a trough aloft, swinging down over the surface high here and bringing that moisture into the, on those northerly winds into the north side on Alaska Dutch Harbor of the Alaska Peninsula. Sunny on the south side, some fog at least early on here on the Bering Sea side. Bristol Bay, nothing but sunshine there, and again extending up into the interior. And this is the next system we're watching tonight. We'll push northeastward initially. In fact, most of the push will be off to the northeast with a ridge of high pressure right through here, redeveloping out over the Bering Sea as the other one pulls off to the east. Very weak remnant of that trough coming through a frontal boundary. And this mostly a thermal feature right through here, but there will be a few variable clouds, just some flurries possible and clouds, maybe some fog up on the eastern Arctic coast as that pushes eastward throughout the night. Again, not much change out here over the Gulf due to the high pressure and light wind conditions. Probably see an increase in that cloud cover coming up Cook Inlet, maybe reaching as far north as Kenai at this point, and kind of could get into some maybe dense fog conditions again over Kodiak Island, mostly on the east side, and mostly cloudy skies, but losing the showers now, continuing to decrease, maybe a few breaks in the clouds. But this next band of rain poised to move in late tonight at the earliest, or by early tomorrow morning at the latest, and should be at least to this position midday tomorrow, could be even farther north than that. A couple of waves down here to the south, and so that'll be continuing northward. Another development down here will be pulling up late tomorrow night and on Tuesday. But first, this front will spread rainfall into the, or at least to the coast. You'll see a return to cool and rainy, snowy type conditions, breezy southwest winds, 10 to 20, some higher gusts, especially over the western capes ahead of this. And it may take until late afternoon for that rainfall to push inland away from the coast, but it'll be trailing back across the Seward Peninsula. High pressure here will keep the front up to the north, and then the gale force winds, rain, and fog with that next system really not moving to the east too fast here, kind of staying out in that area with the high pressure developing and holding it back to the west. Clear skies tomorrow, sunshine, temperatures in the 60s to lower, possibly even mid-70s in some areas over the interior, and maybe a few afternoon showers and variable clouds up there over the Kobuk Valley to maybe the extreme western Koyukuk valleys. Otherwise, sunshine and fair conditions all the way to the Arctic coast. And then that system makes a pretty good move to the east tomorrow night, and by Tuesday afternoon it'll be all the way over here into the northeast interior with the front trailing back to the Alaska Range, where it'll likely develop some shower conditions there. And then the colder temperatures Rain changing to a mixed condition, probably staying snow, whatever falls up along the eastern Arctic coast, another trough following in behind, but really this high pressure becoming more dominant once again. And we've got this front and a band of rain up along the southeast coast. As this low tracks to the northwest or north-northwest, look for the winds to kick back up along the marine areas of the southern panhandle there, maybe the 22, 3, 4 knot range. So small craft advisories, but the stronger winds will actually stay maybe even outside of those areas and in the offshore quadrant. But sunshine again from the Copper River Basin back across South Central all the way to Bristol Bay in the southwest coast. High pressure, northeast wind flow, good for clear skies right out to the coastline and beyond. But the light winds, extensive low clouds and fog out over the Bering Sea. And probably with this switch around in the wind condition, that should push this low cloud deck back off the coast and hopefully out of Prince William Sound Tuesday afternoon or by Tuesday afternoon. Could happen sooner than that, but also Cook Inlet probably will lose whatever clouds we pick up tonight, and tomorrow will be gone Tuesday. And back out to the west again, this front making a little bit of a push to the east there, bringing the gale force winds into mostly Adak, possibly Atka, but light wind conditions over the Fox Islands, and then lighter winds back behind the front where it's more showery. And looking at the temperatures for today, 72 at Skagway early on, with mostly in the 50s though across the southeast coast, and moving over to the temperatures here, 70 degrees there at Talkeetna, and again also Palmer reached 70 as well, upper 60s down in northern Cook Inlet, Anchorage, 49 though at Homer, and 50 there at Seward, affected by that marine layer that's all along the coastline, 46 all they managed at Cordova, but Copper River, or Copper Center pushed up to 63. 67 in Fairbanks, a little cooler back to the west, Bettles at 58 and a 48 at Anatuvik. 41 up there at Atchison on the north slope, and otherwise mid to upper 30s there for the Arctic coast. About the same here for the northwest interior and out along the coastline there. 35 in Nome, 40 at St. Michael, 43 at Amonic. Mid 60s here through the lower and mid Kuskokwim River valleys out to the Delta with Bethel at 62. And for the Pribilofs, mid 40s today. Same thing for the Alaska Peninsula, or anyway, 44 at Cold Bay, a little more sun at Sand Point with 50, more clouds, 41 and then Alaska, and mid 40s to upper 30s out towards Shimia. And there's Kodiak with 47 degrees. Lows tonight, dropping a little below that down in that area, but not too much. Mid 30s to the Copper River Basin, otherwise 30 to 40 degrees over the interior. Off to the east, dropping into the 20s. In the 20s for the North Slope and Arctic coastal areas, and upper 20s to lower 30s back to the northwest. Lows in the 40s there across all of the Panhandle. Highs for tomorrow, again, mid 40s out in the Aleutians, near 40 over the Bering Sea, lower 30s for St. Lawrence Island, and back into the 60s, lower 70s over much of interior Alaska. South Central, again, Susitna Valley, look for lower 70s tomorrow afternoon, and more in the 60s down toward Cook Inlet and Prince William Sound. Hopefully maybe some more sun there tomorrow, but definitely on Tuesday, upper 60s over the southeast interior. Good VFR tomorrow over, well, from the eastern Arctic coast here right down to near the coastline, but it'll probably start out at least marginal like today here over Prince William Sound with some IFR areas as well, especially on the east side of Kodiak Island early in the day, and that may hopefully break back by late morning, and then the IFR creeping up along the southern coast of Prince of Wales Island with marginal VFR in the increase, and again holding here all along the coastline. VFR Bristol Bay, and then areas of marginal VFR, but then the IFR with that next system pushing slowly into the northwest, but I'll make a pretty good jog to the east tomorrow evening and overnight Monday. For passes, Anatuvik VFR, at again same forecast. In fact, all the passes should be wide open tomorrow. Rainy ceilings, visibilities all along the Alaska Range will be unlimited, with Mentasta and Tanita both VFR. Portage, marginal VFR tomorrow on either entrance, probably more likely on the east side. And for Chilkoot and White VFR, freezing levels 6,000 feet here. Southwest interior out to Bristol Bay, dropping back 6,000 feet colder down to the surface back up over the Russian Far East. associated with that trough that'll be pushing eastward and into mainly the northern interior tomorrow night and Tuesday. And for the icing threats, up to 10 to 12,000 feet could be of the moderate variety out there over the western Aleutians, but a narrow band of it. Still have some icing threats up here due to that next incoming system from Russia, and also over the southern southeast coast due to the front coming up from the northeast Pacific. Wind flow chart showing upper high pressure right over south central Alaska tomorrow, and the jet still arcing up, keeping this area here under the influence of the damper, wetter, windier conditions there. And then the next trough poised to move in later on. High pressure temporary popping up actually is going to begin to develop and become strengthening, or will strengthen. And it looks like after this trough moves through early in the week, high pressure will build right back in for the remainder of the week. And for the 9,000 foot winds, southwest pretty brisk there, increasing ahead of that rather strong trough coming in, heading into the northwest coast. Light winds under the high pressure, northeast winds out over the Gulf of Alaska. And light variable winds, high pressure over the southern and central interior, still pretty strong at 3,000 feet, 35 to 40 knots up there. Southeasterlies, 25 to 30 knots off the southeast coast, and then 45 knot winds with that low just southwest of Shemya. Turbulence-wise, pretty smooth over the interior, picking up some moderate chop here over the northwest, back down through the Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island. Pretty smooth for most of the Bering, a little choppy out to the west, and then a little increase in the turbulence of the light to moderate variety tomorrow over the southern panhandle. And after the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm Jim Peranto. Flooding is the #1 killer in weather-related deaths in the United States. On average, about 100 deaths occur each year due to flooding. In Alaska, flooding events can occur any time during the year and are a constant threat for people living in flood-prone regions across the state. Today in the studio I have Sam Albanese, who is the Warning Coordination Meteorologist at the Anchorage Forecast Office. He's going to talk to us today about flooding in Alaska and what you can do to prepare for flooding events. Welcome to the studio there, Sam.
Thanks for having me again, Jim.
Good to have you back in.
Yes.
We're going to talk about flooding today, just general types of flooding. What times during the year in Alaska is there greatest potential for having floods?
Really, there's two key times a year. Of course, everybody knows about the ice jam flooding that we have, and that's in the spring during the spring breakup, and that's a problem. And we had a pretty significant season last year. And then the other time of year that it's really a problem is when we get into our fall storm season, where we typically have storms that have a lot of moisture with them, a lot of rainfall, and increases the probability of seeing flooding.
In the fall, we also have the extratropical cyclones that come up from Japan.
That's correct.
So is that sort of tied into that fall season of getting more moisture? And
oh, definitely, because you have these storms that are pretty strong. They have a good tropical connection of tropical moisture. A lot of them are connected all the way down to Hawaii, the Pineapple Express as we call it. So you're bringing up a lot of tropical moisture into especially the coastal regions of the state where we have a lot of orographic lift, that type of mountainous precipitation. It enhances the precipitation, focuses it in certain areas, and then you really wind up with some flooding problems.
So what are some of the regions that are most vulnerable to flooding?
Well, again, now the coastal portions of Alaska, they definitely are at risk. And really, when you start thinking about flooding and the danger areas, it's also going to be focused on the population centers, like places around Prince William Sound, the Kenai Peninsula. It's not to say that there isn't a problem. We have some pretty good floods that occur up in the Susitna Valley. Of course, up in the Fairbanks area, you have flooding. Basically, anything south of the Brooks Range where there's a population center and a river or a stream is where you have your biggest threat for the heavy precip type flood events.
And there have been some pretty significant flooding events over the last several years. I think of Valdez and Keystone Canyon, at Seward recently. And these are places that get typically a lot of moisture, a lot of rain.
And the commonality with the flooding events is it wasn't just a lot of precipitation, it was a tremendous amount, extraordinary amount of precipitation even by their standards. Heavy rainfall that occurred over a day or two and you just wind up with the perfect recipe for some pretty significant flood events.
What types of floods are there?
Well, the one that we've been talking about, we tend to call it an aerial flood. Area-wide flood is the one that we're tending to focus on, but of course you have your ice jam flooding. Flash flooding is another problem that people really need to be concerned about, although in Alaska it's not as big of a problem, but it does happen. The causes of it are a little bit different. Our flash flooding tends to be caused by, say, like a glacial dam release type of flood. And then the other thing that we are concerned about is dam breaks, where we have some of these hydroelectric projects where there's dams, and we worry about that because if there's a failure in the dam, that's a flash flood. And the difference between a flash flood and an aerial flood is basically the cause of the event to the time that it's going to impact you is very short, within the first 6 hours. We could even have floods from volcanic eruptions where there's melt on the glaciers around the volcano, and you get this surge of water coming down the river, like the Drift River, for example.
Mm-hmm. So what can people do to prepare for floods?
Well, first and foremost, the most important thing is realize whether you're in an area that's prone to flooding. And basically, if you're near a river or stream, the potential for flooding is there. But understand the historic perspectives. If you know that you're in an area that's had floods, understand where the danger areas are, and then know where you need to be out of the danger zones, what you need to do. Have a plan of action, an emergency action plan, especially when we're in the fall flood season. Have an emergency action kit where you're going to have some supplies that you can grab and immediately get out of harm's way, but still have something to fall back on so that you're not just stranded somewhere.
Where can someone go to find out if they're in a flood-prone region? Is there a place in the community that they can go to?
Probably talk to your local emergency management officials, the local police officials. That would be a good start. The Alaska River Forecast Center here in Anchorage, they have cataloged areas of where there's historic floods and flood threat. So there are resources that you can find, at least from the Weather Service or on the web.
Okay. And there's also this program that you're familiar with, you're involved with, Storm Ready.
Exactly.
That ties into this, right?
Exactly, okay. Yes, it does. Because Storm Ready focuses on the events that are weather-related that cause disasters in communities. And that program really works with the local community to know what the dangers are, what the mitigation is necessary, what mitigation you need to take to be prepared, and knowing where you're going to get your warnings from, how you're going to be alerted to the danger.
And where can people get notifications and warnings about floods?
Well, the Weather Service issues flood warnings. We have it on our web pages. Your local emergency management officials also will be providing you warnings, basically from what we tell them about what's going on. We work very closely with the communities to make sure that people know what's going on.
And what's the best website that you would recommend for the viewers out there to go to?
I would say start with weather.gov, click on the area of interest that you're in, and it'll take you to the forecast office that's responsible for providing the warnings to your community, and that's the easiest way to figure out where to go.
Well, thank you, Sam, for coming in today and talking to us about floods.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for joining us here on Alaska Weather Facts. Until next time.
Welcome back. Was that next frontal system pushes up. Winds tomorrow 15 to 25 knots or so here from the east-southeast. Lighter up to the north. Light variable winds over the inside waters. Maybe coming a little more southeast in the 15 to 20 knot range late tomorrow down toward Dixon Entrance. And then for Tuesday, another system comes up off the coast here. So again, 20 to 25 knot winds associated with that. Small craft advisories may actually possibly could stay a little farther to the west, but probably some increase in the winds will be seen here again in the south. Lighter to the north. South winds 20 knots, so for Lynn Canal late in the day. Light variable winds from the North Gulf Coast tomorrow. Southwest breeze, Prince William Sound, Cook Inlet, and then light variable out here, Shelikof Strait and the Southern Inlet. East-northeast 10 to 15 for the Barrens and Kodiak. Then on Tuesday, light variable winds at about 15 here for the east side of Kodiak Island. Otherwise, a general westerly wind at about 15, but up to 20 knots there for Shelikof Strait. Just barely a breeze for Cook Inlet, southwest 10, and west 20 with higher gusts around the Whittier area. And for the Monday outlook for the Bristol Bay Zone, northwest at 10, northeasterlies 10 everywhere else. And winds will stay light in that area through the Tuesday as well, except maybe become a little more northerly across the peninsula there and northwest for Bristol Bay or west-northwest. But all those winds again on Tuesday, which the slide dropped out of, all around 10 knots. Same thing for the Fox Islands tomorrow, northeast 10, picking up to the gales here toward the central Aleutians and small crafts out to the west. Still have some gale force winds out front moving eastward, but not a whole lot, but that'll spread some small craft advisories all the way over to Atka, northeast 15 or 10 to 15 for the Fox Islands. Southwest coast, kind of light and variable, but 25 knots here to start with for St. Lawrence Island, and then kind of turning southeast, but staying on the light side here, especially the 20-knot winds will be over the southwest portion of that zone, southwest 15 for the St. Lawrence Island area, 15 or less. Tomorrow, brisk wind advisories out through this area. Could see some gale force gusts with that next front out ahead of that as that comes in. They'll be mostly right through there. Lighter winds off to the east. Then it looks like possible pretty good winds as that system tracks eastward there. At some portion, probably early in the day, you could see some gale force westerlies for a short time here on the east side. 20 knots on the west side. Tonight again, fair over the interior. Showers ending over the panhandle. And then this pushes some moisture in tomorrow, and then that will kick through quite rapidly tomorrow night. And on Tuesday, that'll swing through Tuesday night. High pressure builds right back in for warm and dry conditions again over all of southern Alaska for late Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And I don't want to put the kiss of death on next weekend, but it may last through Saturday as well before we see any major shift in the jet stream. Well, that's a look at the weather for tonight. Thanks for joining us.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.